In the middle of a dead desert, where nothing should exist, they built a city so beautiful, the world still cannot explain it. Massive temples carved directly into rose-red cliffs. Perfect water systems in a land with almost no rain. Trade routes connecting 3 continents. And then, they vanished. No war destroyed them, no plague erased them. They simply disappeared. Who were they? The Nabataeans, and their story is the greatest mystery the ancient world ever left behind. 4th century BC. The Arabian Desert, one of the harshest environments on Earth. Scorching heat by day, freezing cold by night. Almost zero rainfall. No rivers, no lakes, no obvious source of water. No logical reason for any civilization to exist here, and yet, somewhere in the rocky canyons of modern-day Jordan, a people called the Nabataeans were quietly building something extraordinary. We do not know exactly where they came from. Most historians believe they were originally nomadic Arab tribes, moving across the desert following trade and grazing routes. They spoke a form of Aramaic, the same language Jesus would later speak. They had no great rivers like Egypt's Nile, no fertile farmland like Mesopotamia, no natural harbors like Greece. What they had was something far more valuable in the ancient world: location. They sat at the crossroads of the ancient world's most important trade routes. From Arabia came incense and spices. From India came silk and precious stones. From Egypt came grain and gold. And every single one of those trade routes passed through Nabataean territory. The Nabataeans understood something that most ancient peoples missed completely. You do not need to produce wealth. You need to control its movement. They became the greatest middlemen in the ancient world. Every caravan crossing their territory paid taxes and tolls. Every merchant needed their knowledge of water sources to survive the desert crossing. Every trader needed their protection from bandits. The Nabataeans provided all of this and charged accordingly. At their peak, they controlled trade worth the equivalent of billions of dollars in today's money. Frankincense and myrrh, used in religious ceremonies across the entire ancient world, passed almost exclusively through Nabataean hands. The Romans paid enormous sums for these goods. The Nabataeans took their cut. Every single time. But here is what made them truly remarkable. While other desert peoples spent this wealth on wars and conquest, the Nabataeans spent it on something that would last 2,000 years. They built Petra. Petra. Even the name sounds like something from another world. Hidden in a narrow canyon in the mountains of southern Jordan, accessible only through a dramatic narrow gorge called the Seek, barely wide enough for 2 camels to pass side by side. You walk through this dark, winding canyon for over a kilometer. The walls rise 80 meters on either side, blocking the sun, amplifying every sound. And then, the canyon opens, and there it is, the treasury. A facade 40 meters high and 28 meters wide, carved with absolute precision directly into the rose-red cliff face. Columns, pediments, figures, decorative details so fine they seem impossible without modern tools. And this is just the entrance. Petra contained over 800 individual monuments carved into the rock, temples, tombs, theaters seating 8,500 people, royal palaces, ceremonial halls, an entire city of 30,000 people carved into and built among the cliffs. But the most extraordinary achievement of Petra was something you cannot even see from the outside: its water system. In a region that receives barely 15 centimeters of rain per year, the Nabataeans engineered a water network of pipes, cisterns, dams, and channels so sophisticated that it supplied a city of tens of thousands in the middle of a desert. They collected every drop of rainfall, stored it, distributed it perfectly. Modern engineers who have studied this system say it was centuries ahead of its time. How did desert nomads develop this technology? That is just one of the mysteries of the Nabataeans. What made the Nabataeans genuinely unique, beyond Petra, was their culture. In a world where women were almost universally treated as property, Nabataean women had extraordinary rights. They could own property, sign contracts, initiate divorce, appear in public unveiled, eat alongside men at banquets. Greek writers who visited were shocked. They wrote home describing Nabataean society as almost incomprehensibly equal by ancient standards. Nabataean art was also unlike anything else in the region. Simple, almost abstract. Geometric patterns and minimal human figures, at a time when Greek and Roman art was highly realistic. Their pottery was so thin and light, with walls sometimes less than 1 millimeter thick, that modern potters struggle to replicate it, even with contemporary tools. Their writing system, Nabataean Aramaic, was so elegant and widely used that it eventually evolved into Arabic script, the writing system used by over 1.8 billion people today. Every time you see Arabic writing, you are looking at the distant descendant of Nabataean script. Their language, their culture, their trade networks, all quietly shaping the world long after they themselves were gone. For centuries, the Nabataeans managed their most dangerous neighbor with remarkable skill: Rome. The Romans wanted Nabataean trade wealth, wanted control of the incense routes, wanted Petra. In 62 BC, the Roman general Pompey, the same man who would later clash with Julius Caesar, tried to conquer the Nabataeans. He failed. The Nabataeans simply disappeared into their desert, avoiding pitched battle, cutting off Roman supply lines, making conquest impossible. The Romans tried again, failed again. Eventually, Rome and the Nabataeans reached an uneasy arrangement. The Nabataeans paid tribute. Rome provided protection. Both sides made money. For over a century, this worked. The Nabataean kingdom reached its greatest heights during this period, building Petra's most magnificent monuments while officially being a Roman client state. But Rome was patient, and Rome was watching. And in 106 AD, when the last Nabataean king, Rabble II, died without a strong successor, Rome moved. The Emperor Trajan simply annexed the Nabataean kingdom. No great war, no heroic last stand. Just a Roman governor arriving, Roman soldiers marching in, Roman law replacing Nabataean law. The kingdom that had survived for centuries was now a Roman province, called Arabia Petraea. But this was not the end of the Nabataean story. It was the beginning of something even stranger. Here is what makes the Nabataeans truly mysterious. They did not disappear when Rome conquered them. They continued living in Petra, continued their culture, continued their trade. For another 300 years, Petra remained an important city under Roman and later Byzantine rule. So what happened? Three things, happening slowly and simultaneously. First, the trade routes shifted. As Roman sea trade developed, merchants discovered they could ship goods from India and Arabia by sea through the Red Sea and up to Egyptian ports. They no longer needed the overland routes through Nabataean territory. Petra's greatest asset, its location, became irrelevant. Second, an earthquake. In 363 AD, a massive earthquake struck the region. It destroyed a large portion of Petra's buildings and, most critically, shattered the water system that kept the desert city alive. Without water, Petra could not support its population. Third, the Byzantine shift. As the Roman Empire became Christian and its center of gravity moved to Constantinople, Petra became a backwater. Funding dried up. The population drifted away. By the 7th century, when Islamic armies swept through the region, Petra was essentially empty. A ghost city, carved into the cliffs, waiting. The Nabataean people themselves did not vanish. They gradually merged into the surrounding Arab populations. Their language evolved. Their culture was absorbed. Their identity dissolved. Until they were simply gone. For over 1,000 years, Petra was known only to the local Bedouin tribes who lived in its carved caves and tombs. The outside world had completely forgotten it existed. Then, in 1812, a young Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt heard rumors of an extraordinary ancient city hidden in the Jordanian mountains. He disguised himself as an Arab pilgrim, because no Westerner could safely travel in the region at the time. He convinced a local guide to take him to the site by claiming he wanted to make a sacrifice at a local shrine. And then, walking through the Sikh, he became the first Westerner in over 1,000 years to lay eyes on Petra. He was so overwhelmed he could barely write. His notes describe standing before the treasury, shaking. He could not reveal his true identity or purpose, so he left quickly. But his description, published later, electrified the European world. Expeditions followed. Archaeologists arrived. Excavations began. And they discovered something astonishing. After 1,000 years of abandonment, Petra was almost perfectly preserved. The rose-red cliffs had protected it. The desert had kept it dry. The remoteness had kept it safe. Today, Petra is Jordan's greatest treasure, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the new 7 wonders of the world, visited by over 1 million people every year. A civilization that vanished, left behind something immortal. The Nabataeans never had the largest army, never controlled the most territory, never built the biggest empire. But for 600 years, they were among the most prosperous and sophisticated peoples on Earth, because they understood something most civilizations miss. You do not need to be the strongest. You need to be the most useful. They found the one thing the ancient world needed, safe passage for trade, and they made themselves indispensable to everyone who needed it. They thrived in an environment everyone else thought was impossible. They built beauty in a place that offered nothing but rock and sand. And when circumstances changed, when the trade routes shifted and the earthquakes came, they adapted as long as they could. And when they could no longer adapt, they left behind Petra, a message carved in rose-red stone that says simply, "We were here. We were extraordinary, and we will not be forgotten." The Nabataeans built one of the ancient world's greatest civilizations, in a place where civilization had no right to exist. They carved beauty from bare rock, drew water from empty sky, connected 3 continents through sheer ingenuity. And then, quietly, slowly, they faded into history, leaving behind a rose-red city that the desert preserved for 2,000 years, just waiting to be found. If this video gave you something new, like it. It helps this channel more than you know. Subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest lost civilizations. And tell me in the comments, have you ever visited Petra? Or is it on your bucket list? I will see you in the next one.